Hi everybody, welcome to Stress-Free Lounge. I am your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the summer solstice. It's the 21st of March, 2024. Sorry, I said summer solstice. I meant to say the vernal equinox. It is the equinox means equal nights, so it's the day when the sun is crossing the plane of the equator on the ecliptic. And the day today should be just pretty much exactly as long as the same as the night. So a little bit of astronomical lead-in for our show tonight. I'm going to go jumping right into questions tonight here because I need to keep it brief. I am just wrapping up a couple of other things that I need to get finished, and then looking forward to starting next week with all kinds of new stuff. So don't have anything particularly riveting to say other than the fact that we went to see the went to the worst possible place to see the Falcon 9 launch, which was right underneath the Falcon 9. I never thought I'd say this. I genuinely thought, after having seen the Apollo launches from 10 miles away, I thought this was going to be mind-boggling to watch the Falcon 9 because I was within 2.5 miles of the launch site. Hi, everybody. Hello to everybody who's saying hello. So I drove Natasha out there, and I said, honey, I don't want to oversell you on this, but I think you're going to be just gobsmacked, and you're just going to go, oh. So we got to within about 2 miles, and there was, 30, 40 cars there, easy. Just pulled over on the side of the road, waited for the countdown. Used this tremendous app that Steve Green talked about called the Launch kind of a app that tells you when the next launch is. I'm watching the countdown time, and at 5 minutes to lift off, it went to live stream. So I watched the live stream from SpaceX. So I'm watching this, and next thing I know, on the live stream, it's about T-minus 40 seconds and counting, and I see this light over the horizon. Then I just realized, oh, you idiot, this thing is obviously, the live stream is a bit delayed. So there goes the Falcon 9, and I can honestly say that being within 2.5 miles of it, it was one of the most underwhelming experiences of my life. And I really think that that's actually a compliment in a way. It's not a big rocket, and it's an extremely clean rocket. Now, we saw it, sunset was at 7, the liftoff was at 7:28, so I thought, hey man, the lighting's going to be perfect. And sure enough, once it got up to a certain altitude, it just lit up the exhaust gas stream, and then it just bent and started heading towards Los Angeles. We could see after the stage separation, we could see the plume spreading out. And as far as the noise goes, I mean, it wasn't as loud as a jet landing overhead. It was, which in a way was a bit of a relief. It was, it's a 2.5-hour drive there and back, and I thought, man, this is going to be so overwhelmingly cool and just so mind-blowing that I'm going to want to go to every single one of these things. And then I just realized, oh, you know what? I think I don't need to go out to Vandenberg for another Falcon 9 launch for a while. Obviously, the Starship will be a different story, and I suppose one of the lessons, it's not a bad deal. I mean, I'm glad I went. I'm very glad I went. We had a fun drive, as we always do. But I do remember thinking, I guess the only thing I can really conclude from it is that the Falcon 9 is an extremely impressive, very 21st century rocket, but it's not a Saturn V. And I'm not even sure the Starship has the same effect that the Saturn V does. It may have something to do with the fact that the Starship's got 33 engines and Saturn V had 5 of them. But there's something about those F1 engines on the Saturn V that from 10 miles away, 10 miles, when the sound hits you, you could just feel it vibrating your organs. It was just mind-boggling. Anyway, we got to do that. That was fun. Some people saying they're having some problems. It looks good on this end. We got got a green light for the output, so streaming seems to be okay. Hopefully it's not a stream problem and it's more of an individual problem. Underwhelming is the goal, Bill, says John Condon. Launches should be about as banal and mundane as possible. That's the way I thought about it, too. As we were driving out of there, I just thought, Hey, look, there's another rocket going into orbit. It's like watching a commercial jet take off. Um, Road Rider says, got our Hankers ready, Billy Bean. Any word on Bean? No, I have to get the ultrasound done. I'll probably get it done on Tuesday. Wasn't able to do it today. Right now, I'm just happy for every day. You know, I did talk to, after I, actually, that's not true. There has been an update because last Thursday I was at the vets. I think I mentioned this on Friday when I did the show. Um, there's definitely a growth there on the side. And what the doctor who's been treating him for the diabetes for the longest time said, if it is his spleen, then no problem. We just take it off and he just keeps on going. If it's not the spleen, then it gets more complicated. And we won't know that until we see it in 3D, and we won't see it in 3D till probably Tuesday when we get a chance to do the ultrasound. So I'm just taking every day as a present, and he's certainly not showing any signs of being sick or hurting. So it's not like I don't try. It's not like I try not to think about it. I just am not dwelling on it, and taking every day as they come. So we'll see. Anyway, one thing I have been doing a lot of, and we'll save this for Monday night, really, is this I guess, gosh, well over a year ago now, I picked up an app called Wonder, which is an AI thing for the iPhone, and I generated all these kind of freaky, horrible images of Jack the Ripper and all the rest of it. They do AI avatars now, and I've been fascinated by these things. So you give it 10 pictures and it learns your face, and then it just does all these different renderings, and probably half of them are okay, and then a quarter of them are really good, and 1 in 10 are spectacular. I used one for the thumbnail for Luckiest Guy in the World, and I've got about 50 of them now. I just love them. However, I'm not going to be doing any more because they're all just getting to be variations on the same thing. But for Monday, I'll load a couple of them up because everybody's always said, oh, geez, Bill, you really should get into anime. I've got probably 10 different anime versions of me, and they're kind of fun to see. So, it's called Wonder. So we'll get that done. But it really is quite astonishing. I think it's much better for me than it was for Natasha. I took 10 pictures of Natasha, and her avatars weren't as interesting as mine because I think she's so pretty that it just doesn't have a lot to work with. There's a lot of character on some of these for me, and including one that I think is just maybe my favorite image of me ever. Is that right here? It's not me. It just. Hang on a second. Let me see if I can find it. Because, I just think it's the coolest thing ever. Hang on. Let me see if I got it here. There it is. Nope. No, wait a minute. Hang on. It's worth dragging in to the frame if I haven't already ditched it. Because these things are really fun and they're worth doing. Come on, Bill, you can do it. Just up. Here we go. If it's, I've got it right here somewhere. All right, here, I'll find it and show you because I just love it. I just really do. I just think it's really cool. And I've got a bunch of them, but this one I think is my all-time favorite image that is not me. It just looks enough like me for it to be like, oh, yeah, it looks like Bill. Where did it go? You know what? I'm actually beginning to think this might be one of those. Oh, here it is. Okay. It's a science fiction-y kind of thing, needless to say, so I'm digging it the most. if I was ever living in a Star Citizen world or something like that, then this is how I would look. But the reason I bring this up also is because you can have these done for yourself. I mean, they really are pretty impressive. Once they learn your face, they're pretty cool. So I'll move this over to here. No, I won't. I'll move it over to here. And I'll move it over to here. Yeah, there we go. I think that's just fantastic. Hang on there, YouTube. It's on its way. Kind of cool, huh? I think it's just wicked cool. And app is not, yeah, hell, Vectron, exactly. App is not real expensive, and it'll generate those things. All it needs is a bunch of different pictures of yourself, and yeah, I feel like I'm ready to just jump on board the Starship Enterprise and just go. By the way, Dash Rip Rock, yes, thank you very much. The was it the search for Spock, or was it the Voyage Home? Whichever one it was, where they had their where Chekhov is wearing his pink Lord Fauntleroy outfit. That's got to be the worst costume design of the future in the history of the world. I'll never forget how awful, and all of those modern outfits. McCoy, they all just look like pathetic. This is how the future's supposed to look, by God. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to jump into questions here and try to make as many people as happy and keep the show as short as possible tonight. But yeah, that was pretty cool. I was looking at end credits for Buckaroo Banzai. I think that might be a fun thing to do with Major Mace Mattingly, to have the four guys do the Buckaroo Banzai end credit walk, just to test things like, the zero-G footsteps and stuff. You kind of rappel down the ramp off of the front of the space station and just do that ultimate credit sequence walk from Buckaroo Banzai. That'd be cool. All right. Sorry to have to rush through this one. I'm just trying to wrap things up, and I sure don't like canceling, and I don't like canceling two in a row either. So let's see what we got here. Login. Empire of Terror continues to be released. And I'm getting some very nice comments about that too. I was hoping we could get a little more marketing behind it, but it is what it is. So I am very pleased with it. Eric Hansen says it's DC's new villain, the Ridiculer. I love it. That's me. The Scarlet Ridiculer. Eric, thank you very much for putting these together at the last minute here. Okay, so we got a Steve Young, you got an Eric Blake. We got two. Well, I'll allow some refreshes, but like I said, I do need to keep this one short, and it's better to do a short show than just to not show up, I reckon. So let me do these two. I'll refresh it, and then I'll take a couple from the comment section. How about that? And then we'll call it a night. All right. Steve Young. Evening, Bill. Evening, Steve. It's all about energy. The communists know that all industry is driven by energy consumption, so the path to truly weaken America is to rob it of its energy availability. Exactly correct. Are we seeing the end game of a Soviet plot to divest America from its defense industry and our allies through green weenies robbing us of oil? We're seeing a plot to rob us of our freedom because of oil, and we can see this all across the board. We have to have electric cars because they run on pixie dust, not coal, and so on. So the whole environmental scare, the whole climate change scare, is designed to get us to stop using energy so that we can not use our cars, get around to where we want to, and so that we cannot have a prosperous life. They want us dependent on the government, and the government will just print more money, and they'll hand us our algae cakes, and we'll own nothing, and we'll be happy. That's the theory. you can tell that this is not a real crisis, because if it was a real crisis, the carbon crisis, then you wouldn't have people flying in private jets to go to carbon crisis meetings. That's your evidence. That's all you need. This whole thing, I think, can most clearly be explained. I've done this a few times. Is not only it's not Republicans versus Democrats. It's not progressives versus conservatives, and it's not even confined to America. This is a product of a small number of extremely powerful people who want to widen the gap between rich and poor. And I don't mean they're capitalists by widen the gap by expanding the balloon. I mean they want to destroy the middle class, because the middle class is independent of them. The middle class is not dependent on our elites telling us what to do. We can do just fine without them, and we live a lovely little life here. I mean, the most powerful person in the world 100 years ago might arrive, 150 years ago certainly, might arrive in a carriage drawn by 8 horses. My carriage is 360 horses, and I'm just a regular guy with a regular carriage. So all of this is designed to push down the middle class into the lower class. This is why they want us talking about eating bugs, and steak is dangerous because cows produce methane, and methane's going to kill the planet. And when you think about it, all of it is tied to climate change. All of it. Everything. Which is why they cannot ever relax on this front. Right? Why do we have to have smaller cars? Well, because of climate change. Why can't we have more power plants and have more fun? Because of climate change. Why can't you have your ATV? Because of climate change. Why can't you, why do you have to use a shower that has this low flow water thing that means you don't even really get to take a shower? It's because of climate change. Because of climate change. You can't have more climate change. Climate change. It's a crowbar that they're using to leverage us away from middle class prosperity, and it's working for some people, and the people who buy into it with religious fervor. This is the value of the other. You see what they've done. The Empire of Terror is very clear about this. The Nazis had the Jews. The communists had wreckers and traitors and kulaks, rich peasants. Just think about that. That was the class enemy for the first half of the Soviet Union, were the kulaks, the rich peasants. That's the definition of a kulak. Well, technically, definition is a tight fist, somebody who's greedy. But there were 3 classes of peasants. There was the middle peasant, the low peasant, and the rich peasant. And the rich peasant are the guys that are causing all the problems. Rich peasants. It's a contradiction in terms. But that was the class enemy. And then when it came time to get rid of Trotsky became the leader of the class enemies, and that's where Goldstein and the 2-minute hate comes from in 1984. Trotsky was responsible for everything. If a train went off the rails because the engineer was drunk, then that was Trotsky's fault. And if inflation is high, then that's MAGA Republicans' fault. They used to try to blame all Republicans, but there's just too many people who know Republicans, so it's got to be those extremist MAGA Republicans who are constantly trying to overthrow our democracy, you see? So if liberals say that climate change is real and we have to do something about it, then anybody who mocks that idea and doesn't go along with it isn't a liberal, which means they're a MAGA Republican, which means that the liberals adhere to climate change the same way that they wear masks for the epidemic, which is enthusiastically. What's the word I'm looking for? Anticipatory compliance. If the government were to issue a statement that said that in order to prevent climate change, everybody had to have a green armband with a little picture of a leaf on it, and that green armband signified that you were taking climate seriously, that you were worrying about, I was on Expedia recently, and I noticed a couple of airfares said this is a low-carbon airfare. I thought, wow, I wonder how they pull that off. But, if it turned out that they were to, and by the way, don't be surprised if you see something more or less like this. If the government were to say that, that those people who are doing the very best to prevent climate change by following all the rules that we're giving out, that they'd be issued a green armband, then I guarantee you that you'd be seeing an awful lot of green armbands around here in California anyway. Roadrunner says that he'd be wearing a red armband with a big FU on it, and so would I. But I see it out here all the time. I was in the doctor's not too long ago, a couple of days ago. I had just a little cyst, and I don't have it anymore. I've been trying to lose weight, and so I did. I lost several grams. And by the way, for those of you who, I mean, it's not like it's a big deal, right? I mean, it's like nothing, right? Just there's a needle, and you don't even feel that, and the next thing you know, it's gone. But when I was at the doctor's office, 4 of the people there were wearing masks. They weren't wearing N95 masks because those are uncomfortable but effective, or they're not really effective, but they're more effective than the face diapers. Now, there were 4 people there wearing the face diapers, and they were wearing the face diapers to show other people that they were good liberals, that they weren't any of these MAGA Republicans who were science deniers. And I thought, this is like a little warning flag that says, hello, I'm a neurotic. I'm a neurotic coward. Did I say road runner, road rider? I'm sorry. My road runner. Yeah, road runner said that. So you get the idea, right? Hang on a second. Lady Jane Waterman says, hey, Bill, did you hear about the self-proclaimed lesbian Marxist? What? Is such a thing possible? Who is the president of the American Library Association, who set up an exhibit several states promoting the dissolution of all U.S. border policy combined with something about climate change. She claims to be a Marxist. She can't have any idea what that really means, and what does climate change have to do with immigration? Oh, well, that's easy. You see, white people, using their unearned wealth, are using things like automobiles and burning electricity. Burning electricity and using your automobile and eating steak creates carbon in the atmosphere, which causes the earth to burn, and the people that suffer from this the most are people of color who live in places where they can't do anything about it. So we are essentially killing the brown people of the planet by our carbon consumption, and so therefore, since we're making so many of the brown people's habitats, I'm sorry, I should say people of color's habitats, unlivable, then that gives them the moral right to come here and puts us under the moral obligation to accept them. That's how that dynamic works. Hope that's clear. It's actually precisely what's happening. We are using more than our fair share of energy, as if there is such a thing as a fair share of energy or oxygen or water or food or anything else, or money. We're using more than our fair share. And this is causing the climate change that is destroying the habitats of people of color. And so therefore, we have an obligation to allow all the people of color into the neighborhood because we have destroyed their habitats and turned them into wastelands. And my point is, well, they were wastelands before we started using carbon, and it's got nothing to do with carbon anyway. But that's how it works. That's the argument. That's ridiculous and insane. Correct. It's ridiculous and insane, the 2 adjectives that you can apply to progressivism. And the problem is that there are people who identify themselves as just garden variety Democrats. Okay, they're not into the progressive movement. They've just voted Democrats their whole lives. They've never liked Republicans, but they especially hated George Bush, and they can't stand Donald Trump. So they see this insanity going on, and they don't like it. I'm not talking about the progressives. I'm just talking about garden variety Democrats. And they see this insanity going on, and they don't like it, and they wish there was something different, and they would like to vote for something different. They're not proud of Joe Biden. Nobody's proud of Joe Biden. Nobody thinks he's a great president. They just prefer him over Orange Man. And so what happens is the Democrats and the progressives set up a world where if you're a run-of-the-mill average Democrat, you have to make a choice. Do you want to be on team transgender and have your daughter lose her swim meet to a guy who beats her by 45 seconds? Or do you want to be one of those science-denying MAGA Republicans who don't believe in things like the polio vaccine, or they believe the earth is flat and have no sense of understanding of science and believe that all science is wrong? And that's the choice. That's how the choice has been presented to them. There's no middle ground. Everything, all the contrast has been turned up all the way. You know, you can take any kind of a photo and turn the contrast up to the point where there's nothing left but black and white, and you get like a line drawing. That's how the news media and the pop culture portrays everything. There is no gradation. So you can't ask a legitimate question of science without being a science denier. And if you're a science denier, then the run-of-the-mill Democrats who believe in science, and the way I believe in science, I believe in the power of scientific investigation, obviously. I believe in the power of science and medicine to solve problems, but science and medicine are not a philosophy, they're not a religion, they're not a way of life, it's a tool. I understand that tool better than they do. I've been a professional. I've been paid to do science in my life. I've been paid to do science for a significant amount of my life, actually. So I know what it means. But they are convinced that if you don't get on the Joe Biden bandwagon, then that means that you think the earth is flat. That's basically it in a nutshell. So they have to eat all the rest of the stuff that they can't stand. But that's how it's been presented to them. You're either on Team Biden or you're a flat earther. And Bart's Treasure says the irony is that MAGAs believe in science. MAGA believes in science because we believe that science needs to be held accountable, and that one of the lines I just love the most is that every now and then I come up with something I'm just really quite fond of. And when I think about these progressives, I say, these progressives don't believe in science. They believe in scientists. That's what they believe in. They believe in scientists. Somebody says something that they agree with, and this person is a scientist, and then they don't have to think about it anymore. And their pole star is Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's one of the dumbest men, not just one of the dumbest scientists, one of the most dogmatic and simple and shallow thinkers that I've ever seen achieve public fame. And if Neil deGrasse Tyson says something, then they say, well, he's a scientist, so it must be true. He's a famous scientist, so it must be double true. He's such a weak stick. He's such a poor thinker, Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's no cliche he won't fall for, and then utter with the utmost of pomposity, is sit back as he opines about, as he's like Mr. Science. And of course, you may remember a chap by the name of Dr. Fauci. He was the same way too. Lord Bio says Tyson got his PhD to become a celebrity, not a scientist. Yes, and he's an affirmative action hire. Let's just be, it's not like that's a mystery, right? I mean, there's nothing that Neil deGrasse Tyson has ever said that stands on its own 2 feet in terms of being deep. Now, Carl Sagan was wrong about a lot of things. Carl Sagan was wrong when he started, anything that Carl Sagan thought about politics was wrong. And Carl Sagan couldn't apply his own baloney detection kit to his own thinking when it came to politics. But Carl Sagan was a genius at communication. Carl Sagan had an immeasurable impact on how people viewed the world. And to some degree, Carl Sagan took people too far in the other direction. But he really was a genuinely clever guy and a funny guy and an original thinker, and had the ability to explain complex things in a very accessible way. Carl Sagan deserved to be Carl Sagan. Neil deGrasse Tyson he's the Rey Skywalker to Carl Sagan's Luke Skywalker. I got a super chat here from from the Failing Eyesight division of the BillWhittle.com engineering squad. Labco92, $10 super chat. Oh, good, you're back. I thought I caused a Howard Hughes situation where you were in your own den with dirty underwear and Kleenex boxes on your feet watching 1, 2, 3 for the 312th time. Missed you. Been here. Still got it. Haven't seen it yet. Still working on other things. Haven't had any time for recreation. When I start the DCS squadron, then you will know I've got free time on my hands. But I've still got it, and I'm very grateful for it, and very grateful that it was sent. So thank you very much for that. Jim Moore says Sagan came to the U.S. Naval Academy to give a speech in '89 and managed to put the entire USNA, I would assume that U.S. Naval Academy, put the entire brigade to sleep. The pale blue dot. See, Matt Stegg says the pale blue dot is such a profound statement. It is, but I think it's a profound statement in the other direction. I remember. See, this is how the pendulum always goes too far. So we look at the Earth and we think, wow, the Earth is amazing and all the history here and so on. And along comes the pale blue dot. For those few of you who may not know what we're talking about, there's a picture taken by Voyagers. It leaves the solar system. The plane of the ecliptic is the path that the planets travel on. And because there's a little bit of dust there, there's a little band called the zodiacal light. So you see this little faint little thing of dust, and in the middle of it is one blue pixel. And that's planet Earth. And Sagan says, everything that ever happened in the world, all of the people that ever lived are all on that one blue pixel, this one pale blue dot. That's Earth, that's everything, and so on. And see how small we are relative to the universe? Now that's an important perspective to have, yes. It's important to have that perspective. It's a big place out there, yes. But this may have something to do with the fact that we haven't discovered any aliens after 50 years of looking with extremely sophisticated tools, and we don't see any sign of this changing. We're discovering exoplanets at a rate of thousands a year, but we're not finding any signals. And so my take on the pale blue dot is that the pale blue dot has gone completely in the wrong direction. My take on the pale blue dot now, and has been for quite a long time, this pale blue dot is the most important pixel in the sky. You could have billions or trillions of pixels to cover the entire sky, and all the pillars of creation and all the pixels in the Andromeda galaxy and all of these pixels that make up these beautiful, enormous structures, and we're just this tiny, tiny little thing. But that one blue pixel is the only one that matters. It's the only one that matters. It's the only one that matters. It doesn't mean we're the center of the universe, but it does mean we're the center of interest, for God's sake, at least in this. I am the number of planets and stars and solar systems in the universe is so vast that it seems, if the materialistic view of the world is correct, then certainly that leads to tens of thousands of civilizations, even if you need the moon exactly the way the moon is. But I'm not entirely sure that that's the case anymore. You know, every day that goes by weakens that materialistic view that life is everywhere and that civilization is inevitable if you just give it enough time. There's been a lot of discussion about this, about when is the prime time for civilization in the universe, and I believe we're actually earlier. We're relatively early, or are we relatively late? I can't remember. But one of the other arguments is this whole grabby aliens thing, where if it turned out that intelligence and life were everywhere, then the amount of time it takes for a civilization to expand out into the galaxy is insignificant compared to the amount of time it takes for that life form to evolve to that point. So what if we are the center of interest? What if that's it? You know, what if all of this protein folding is in fact created? I mean, you look at these DNA mechanisms, the animations of how these things replicate, and you see these things walking down molecules and just switching parts out, and things picking things up and moving them over and stuff. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm saying it is beginning to at least become more credible theory. And Roadrunner says the proof of intelligent life in the galaxy is the fact that they're staying away from us. I'm not coming down on you personally on this by any means, but this is the kind of thing I'm starting to rebel against now. This idea that that we're this kind of toxic sort of race, that, you know, we fight wars and things, and that any other civilization that is a star-faring civilization would stay far, far away from from planet Earth with its killer apes, it's uniquely evil humans that, unlike the rest of the intergalactic brotherhood, which is nothing but love and nothing but, cooperation, and everybody's a vegetarian, and it just doesn't hold up if you really think about it. It just doesn't make much sense. I don't see how you can think about alien species as looking at the Earth and thinking, we're going to stay away from those guys because of how violent they are. It's like, you're in a spaceship, man. If you're in a spaceship, you're in a spaceship because you have advanced technology, and you didn't have advanced technology just so you could go walking around and see what's over the next hill. It doesn't work that way. Technology is driven by need and competition, and it usually means competition to stay ahead of those hairy, one-eyebrowed people up in the hills who come down and try and take our stuff all the time. I just don't buy it. I cannot imagine, let me put it to you this way. I cannot imagine a species. It's beyond my ability to imagine a species that could go from a wooden canvas airplane to landing on another planet in half a century. I can't imagine that. I can see it taking much, much, much longer than that, but I can't see it taking any less time than that. I mean, even if the universe does have other intelligent races in it, we got to get pretty full marks for that. I mean, think about that. That's miraculous. I'm one of these people that has such a high opinion of humanity as a species. Now, there's certain individuals that I'm not so fond of, but nevertheless, for a bunch of tree apes, we can walk time back to Planck time. We can walk time back to 1 billion trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. Now, my right angle for this week is, which we recorded a couple days ago, is called 26 is the new 13, because an astronomer named Gupta has taken a look at some of the stuff that's come back from the James Webb telescopes. A lot of times, a new instrument will allow us to see things and get data that we couldn't do before. And I'm pretty sure it was with the Hubble, not the Hubble Space Telescope. Was it the Hale telescope that Hubble used? I can't remember. But he needed a telescope big enough, Edwin Hubble, to determine redshift throughout the galaxy, to see far enough into the galaxy to see that the farther away you were, the faster things seemed to be moving away. Well, the James Webb Space Telescope has revealed something, and what it's revealed is that at least one scientist thinks that light behaved differently at the beginning of the universe. They're seeing something that looks a bit like crinkles at the edge of the universe with the James Webb Telescope. What this basically boils down to is, it was the one on Mount Wilson, which I drive past every day, every time I go out to, Palm Springs or whatever. The telescope that discovered this was overlooking the city of Los Angeles because, it was such a dark place up there. So what this new data seems to indicate is, and this is why I believe it's true. The second I heard it, I believe it's true. I'll just give you my right angle for the week here real fast. What this means is, if the universe is 13 and change, all right, I'll just say 13 for the sake of the argument. It's 13 and change is the accepted age of the universe for quite a long time now. And if you run the clock backwards 13 billion years, and then you run the clock forwards, you see this expansion at this certain rate, and you realize it's expanding faster than it should be. We need to create something called dark energy and dark matter to, is it not faster? Actually, it's slower. We need to invent stuff that isn't there. Dark matter, dark energy, things that we can't see, not dust clouds. We can detect those with infrared. There's got to be some kind of matter that's causing gravity to slow this thing down. There's got to be more gravity sources out there than we can detect, and a lot more. Like 90% of the universe has got to be made out of this stuff called dark matter and dark energy and all of these other things that are designed to make the expansion match the age. But we have excellent experimental data for the age, and we have excellent experimental data for for the expansion, and so we have to come up with these band-aids in order to do this. But this guy is saying essentially that light might have behaved differently at the beginning of the universe. If the universe is twice as old as we think it is, if it's 26 billion years old, then we don't need dark energy and we don't need dark matter. There's nothing that you have to fix. The equation makes perfect sense. And the second I heard that this observation means that you no longer need dark energy and dark matter to explain what we're seeing, you just need an older universe, then I said, I'd be willing to bet virtually everything I have that it's true. Because the universe is elegant and it's simple. And simple is hard, complicated is easy. When you have to find band-aids, like we have to come up with something that we have no experimental evidence for, and all of physics is going to be looking for this stuff, and all of physics has been looking for dark energy and dark matter for the last 20 years, and they can't find it. And even before this announcement was made, a number of physicists were saying, if you've been looking this hard and you can't find it, maybe it's not there. Maybe your theory is wrong. Well, our theory can't be wrong. We know what the speed of light is, and we know what a redshift is, and we know all this. Yeah, but we have to have something. Well, this guy said, yeah, it looks like light behaved differently. If light behaved differently, if light's speed wasn't constant throughout the course of the universe, then 13 billion years isn't the answer. It's 26 billion years. And then everything becomes very simple again. Very simple again. So, this little discovery that was made without much fanfare is undoubtedly, in my opinion, because of the simplicity factor. You look at Maxwell's equations for the relationship between electromagnetism and things of that nature. These are extremely simple equations. And when Einstein came up with E equals mc squared, he knew he was right the second he got that equation, because the relationship between matter and energy could have filled 40 blackboards. Could have. But when you get it in 5 operatives, you've got something real. So anyway, it's a long way to go from whatever that question was, but hopefully that ticked off that little box. So let's go back over here. It's all about energy. Yes, well, there you go. Eric Blake, the man with the hat's in the office tonight. Come on in if you're ready for the roll of the dice. Oh, Eric, you're going to have to go back. I can't answer this question just yet. You're going to have to go back there because you wrote, come in if you're ready for a roll of the dice, R-O-L-E. And the grammar Nazis are on duty this evening. I can't answer that question, Eric. I just can't take it. For me to accept a question that says the roll of the dice, meaning the character that the dice is playing, I'm just going to have to throw the whole thing out, just prima facie. If you spell a word wrong, then it's obviously clear that your entire position is completely devoid of any meaning whatsoever. We just dismiss it out of hand. I'm kidding. You don't need to rewrite the question, Eric. Everybody makes mistakes like that. Unless you really were talking about the roll of the dice. So let's see if you're talking about the roll of the dice, because if you're saying that quantum has a position to play, well, then it would be the roll of the dice. So it seems that Letitia James and Kangaroo Court Engoron have so blatantly, let's say, overvalued their imposed fine on Trump that it's far more money than even Elon Musk would have had on hand. As such, as Knowles laid out before a show today, Trump has 2 options. He apparently has to pay up before any appeal gets taken care of. 1, declare bankruptcy, which wouldn't exactly look good for a presidential candidate when he's running, or sell his New York City buildings, including Trump Tower, to the New York City government. Now, in all probability, the Kangaroo Court's Engoron's ruling will be overturned, forcing them to reimburse Trump. But as Knowles points out, if the government manages to sell the buildings off beforehand, that reimbursement would just be monetary, and Trump would have to hope that the current owners would be willing to deal. So, Bill, how do you think this will end up, leaving aside how the martyrdom helps Trump, of course? This business of having to pay before the appeal is unconstitutional. That's like saying, I'm going to, you've just been found guilty of murder, well, I'm going to appeal. Well, that's fine. We'll have the execution first, and then we'll have the appeal. I don't believe any of this stuff. And the more they do it, the more ridiculous they look. You can fine Donald Trump $100 billion trillion if you want to. And I don't know why they didn't, because what was it, 700 million or 600 million or 900 million or something? You can, sure, why make it 900 million? Why not make it 900 billion? Why don't you sue Trump for $40 trillion? And that way, you can pay off the debt. Just go ahead, you know. These things take years. If the state moves in and seizes his property before an appeal, and obviously it's not going to survive an appeal and all the rest of it, if the state moves in and takes his property, boards it up, let's say, then what is it? 545 million plus interest. Okay, go ahead, do it. Go ahead and do it. The first thing that I would do is I would launch a suit against every other New York City developer who did the exact same practices as Donald Trump, and I would sue all of them. And I would use the exact same standards that was applied against Donald Trump, so I would own all of their property. And then when I owned all of the property in New York City and all of the property elsewhere in the world, then I would say, okay, well, these are the rules you guys wanted to play by. So now this little class action group of us who brought the same exact charges against all of these other developers that were brought against Donald Trump using the same standards of evidence, same logic, same conclusion. Now we all own New York City because all of you are crooked as can be. So now we're going to tear New York City down, and we're going to turn it into a gigantic rally point for Donald Trump for president rallies. That's what we're going to do. You know, this is their problem. You see, their problem is they're demented. They have Trump derangement syndrome. Just turn it into a prison. I mean, you know. Escape from New York was a instruction manual. It's a damn good idea. Just put everybody who's a lawbreaker on the island. You don't want to follow the law? Fantastic. There's no law in New York City. In fact, it's not even part of the United States anymore. It's a territory. That'd be fun thing to talk through for a minute or two. Why don't we do that? Yes. Here's what we'll do. We'll sue everybody in New York, all the developers. We'll take all the property in New York City. We will basically say, Bill, you can't. The squatters have taken over. I'll say, fantastic. The squatters can have it. I will basically issue a proclamation and say that anybody in New York City without a criminal record who would like to leave New York City before we blow the bridges and the tunnels, you have 30 days. And at that point, I would blow the bridges and the tunnels, and then I would declare New York City to be not a part of the United States of America, be a territory, dependency like Guam. And that Manhattan Island would be like Guam, just have to be a little closer, that's all. And then I would basically take anybody who committed a crime, and I'd say, you have a choice. You can go to jail, or we can set you free in New York City. Those are your two options. Which one do you want? And I would honor that agreement. You want to just be set free in New York City? Then fine, off you go. I'd move all of the businesses out of there. I'd move all of that stuff. I'd decentralize it. It needs to be decentralized anyway. There's no reason to have all of these things next to each other. It's not like people carry bags of money from one bank to another down streets in New York, and ad agencies don't have to be on Madison Avenue anymore. Just do it, fine, fantastic. You want to live without law? You want to live in a world where you can sue people for millions of dollars without any cause? You want to take away people's property without due process, without a fair trial, just railroad this politically? Fantastic. We'll call it Democrat Island, and you can have it. Now, Infidel 42 says the Hudson is too easy to swim across. You'd have to fence it off. Oh, well, of course, you're assuming that we would just leave the Hudson and the East River unattended. But when in point of fact, I think the simplest thing to do would be to build a series of, I would imagine 3 on the east side and 3 on the west side would do it. I would dedicate 3 nuclear reactors, put them right down the length of Manhattan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then I would have those nuclear reactors dedicated all of their megawatt output to cables. And the cables I would just lead into the water. And that way I would electrify the water. And electrify it to the point where if you tossed a cigarette butt into it, it would just go like that. Then I just sit back and relax and enjoy the show. And if you guys want to create your own government in there, fantastic. I bet you anything that you would end up with gang rule, obviously. But if you took all the conservatives and put them on Manhattan Island and just blew the bridges then the defenses would be on the Manhattan Island side to protect us from the people out of there, because we produce. If you put the conservatives on Manhattan Island, blew the bridges, Manhattan Island would become the largest economy in the world in the space of 2 years. I have no question about it. So, there you go. I understand the difference between dark energy and dark matter, and I understand that dark matter depends on how you look at dark matter. I just saw some comments saying, I'm not sure Bill understood this. There is dark matter to the degree that there are things that we can't see, things like gas clouds, brown dwarfs, what are the number of black holes and how much mass is there. These are non-visible forms of matter. But dark matter and dark energy refer to different kinds of matter and energy. And dark energy is just plain nutty, So all of these things are Band-Aids designed to square two things that we have high confidence in that don't match up. One of them is the speed of light, and the other one is the redshift, and we've got both of these things down so precisely that when we see them both pointing in cross directions, we have to say, well, we know they're both true, so what are we going to do to fix this? And these are the Band-Aids that you put on it. So that's kind of how I look at it anyways. All right, so I think how it's going to turn out, Eric, I think it's going to turn out the way everything else that has turned out. I think it's going to turn out the way the Mar-a-Lago raid turned out. I think it's going to turn out the way that all of these charges against him, the Stormy Daniels thing, all of it, I think it's going to just roll off his back. I think it's going to get overturned legally. It's going to turn out the same way as trying to keep him off of the ballots. They've used lawfare to the limit of their ability, and I don't think he's going to pay for anything. I am curious to know, however, what kind of a crowdfunding pull Donald Trump could have if he basically said, look, I don't think it's $645 million, but I'd be curious to know how much it would be. If the thing were really legit, if it were really legit, if Donald Trump needed $600 million to get out of jail, and that the election couldn't happen with him in jail or whatever, I wonder how much money he could raise. This is the coup, guys. It's a slow motion coup. It's like, you ever seen videos sped up of vines? How vines will eventually overtake a wall, and how vines will kill anything else. It's like, just takes years, but this is how it's working. They're just trying to strangle. They're not strangling democracy. We have a republic, but the politicians are elected democratically. We already know that system's been compromised. The protections of the republic are being taken away by elected officials who are functioning inside the republic that were elected democratically by illicit means, but now they're functioning in the republic and using the tools of the republic. They're weakening the strengths of the republic. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. It needs to be said. If you have a solid republic, you don't need democracy. Democracy is nothing but bad. If all of your rights are guaranteed, and your individual rights and are surrounded by ironclad legal promises, then not only do you not need democracy, you don't want democracy. All democracy can do is vote them away from you. If you have perfect protections, what can you do? What can you do beyond that point? All you can do is vote them away. That's why every time I hear people when I hear Republicans talking about our democracy, I just want to scream. I just want to scream. Richard Burton says, we the people could pay off the national debt if we believed it was a worthy cause. Yeah, I don't know what the number is now, Richard. I want to say it's in excess of $300,000-$400,000 per person, including children. But the problem is that money has been. If that money had been invested in infrastructure so that we actually owed it, then we'd have a moral obligation to pay it. But when you simply print money and then say you owe us the money that we printed, well, what did we get for it? Is it our extraordinary roads here in Los Angeles? Is that why we pay, whatever we pay in state income tax for the fabulous roads we have here? Is it our bulletproof electrical grid? Is it our brand new shiny infrastructure? What exactly did we get for which we owe this money? It's just too big, It's too big. If you were to take the United States, keep the United States as an entity. Keep the United States as an entity, the United States of America. Geographically and politically, it's still the United States of America. But instead of having 50 states, let's say you were to have a couple thousand. And each one of these 2,000 states was self-governing and had its own money. Then what you would find pretty quickly is that some states of the 2,000, because you can see it on a 50 state deal, but the granularity is much too coarse. Let's just say you were to take the country, divide it up into 2,000 states based on population, just based on census data. What you'd end up pretty quickly with, especially and critically, if they had their own money, what you would find is, it'd be a simple thing to do using computers. You would be able to buy something in one state, and then if you wanted to purchase a beer in one state, it would cost a certain amount of money. And if you came in with, let's say, with Billville dollars that were sound because it was run in a sound way, then that would cost you fewer of those. And if you came in from Progressiveville and you wanted to buy a beer, it would cost you more because Progressiveville money is worth essentially nothing because they just keep printing it. Then essentially what happens is the bad states go out of business and people either change their governments or they move to good states. It's the federal ability to print money, and only the federal ability to print money, that has allowed us to run up this kind of debt, because it means that the people in the cities decide, and the people in the cities are pretty used to getting handouts from people. They don't care about your ability to drive. So nobody in New York is out there in Manhattan is out there fighting for the right for you to have your own automobile, because nobody drives in Manhattan. It's insane to have a car in Manhattan. You have taxis and you have Ubers now. But if you owned a car, if you owned a private car in Manhattan, you're just parking your car, just the ability to keep your car on the island would cost more than your apartment would. And then we're talking about, $20,000 a month in rent for your car parking space. And then you've got your car and you can't go anywhere with it because wherever you're going, you don't get to park there. It's insane. So do you expect New Yorkers to be fighting for your right to maintain your... No, they are a different kind of people, city people. Matt Stagg says, removing the gold standard was a mistake. It was the biggest mistake ever. It was the simple greatest mistake ever. Somebody showed me a chart of what happened when that happened. Was it 72 or 73? And wages and costs were more or less the same. And then after that happened, there's just this gigantic diversion. And we'd all be poor, and none of us would be able to afford our flat-screen TVs if it weren't for all of the debt. But that ship has sailed. So, when they talk about the Great Reset, the elites want the reset because they've taken the money, and now they're worth billions of dollars, and now they want to reset things, and they'll sell it to us by saying, you won't have any credit card debt. Your credit card debt will be eliminated. Hooray! And you think, great. What you don't realize is that during this process, the people that have decided to zero the debt have bought most of the things that are out there, and you own nothing and you'll be happy. There's a reckoning coming with these people. And I've always been, as a conservative, I've never had any problem with rich people. But this isn't rich. This isn't people with money. And this isn't even people with money who are doing shady kind of things. This is just plain government printing money. And somehow it took long enough. Big government and big business, which used to be mortal enemies of each other, now realized, wait a minute, if we work together, we can have everything we want. We'll just print all the money we want. You can sell stuff to things. In fact, when it comes to pharmaceuticals, we'll pass laws that saying people have to buy your stuff. That's what's happened in the last 10 years, really since Obama, is that big government and big business over the course of the last 20 years have slowly come to realize that they both do better if they're working with each other rather than against each other, because they've been mortal enemies since there's been such a thing as big government and big business. That's the fundamental shift that's happened, in my opinion. They realized, wait a minute now, you want all the power and you want all the money, so if you let us make as much money as we want, then we'll let you have as much power as you want, and then by funding your election campaigns. See how it works? I've said it many times before. It needs to be said. I'll say it again. It's been my honor and privilege to personally know a number of millionaires in my life. And to be perfectly honest with you, if you work hard if you work hard in this country and you have the ability to discipline and planning, it's practically impossible not to be a millionaire if your goal is to become a millionaire. It's not a terribly difficult thing to do. But billionaires are different. There's a huge difference between somebody who's got $20 million and somebody who's got $20 billion. Well, it's not just a thousand-fold difference. The psychology needed for that much money is just very different. You can become a millionaire through hard work and through having a vision for a company or a carbon-14 lab or an art shop or whatever. You can become a millionaire by following your dream, but you can't become a billionaire that way. If you're going to become a billionaire, you have to be able to manipulate the financial system. And I find that to be worthy of a second look. Anyway. All right, so we got one from Joseph Pomeroy. And what time is it? 7:18. So you know what? I think maybe I'll just do this and we'll just call it a day here. Here's a new name, just because it's an interesting point. Can I get a channel? It says we're talking about printing money and so on. It says it's all vapor, gold and silver. Diamonds are worthless. They're just women bait. Got to get some bait. And then T. Smith says diamonds are way overvalued. Diamonds are overvalued because De Beers, the diamond cartel, only releases a small number of diamonds every year. If there was not a diamond cartel, if every diamond in the world were able to be put on the market, then diamonds would fall to 1/10 of their value or less. This is enforced scarcity, and they're masters at it. They're masters at it. And so what they do is they choke off the supply of diamonds to keep the price high. And you can't go out and start a mom and pop diamond mine. Can I get a channel says we make diamonds now? Yes, we make them. We can artificially create diamonds, but artificial diamonds don't have the jewelry value that natural diamonds do. I, needless to say, don't have the eye to tell the difference. But I can tell a difference between cubic zirconium and a real diamond, although I have to really get close and look at it. It doesn't really matter to me. It does matter to some people, and I'm not in any position to tell them that they can't spend the money on the diamond. It's their business. But it is a controlled market, and it is a cartel. So, there we go. Joseph Pomeroy. Good evening, Bill. Good evening, Joseph. I have a Daily Wire subscription. I'm making my way through America's Forgotten Heroes before I get to Empire of Terror. It's amazing work, and thank you for the stories and the heritage. Well, you're welcome. It is amazing stories, and I'm very proud to be able to tell some of them. I saw the video today of the border being flooded by military-aged males, and it's made me realize that the communists in charge of the law in this country want us to react violently so they can throw the book at us. Precisely correct, yes. This is all about provocation. They're provoking the AR-15 response so that they can crack down on the AR-15s. And we have been extremely disciplined about that. Our metaphorical trigger discipline has been excellent. That's bothering them. These DAs will allow people out on bail that have dismembered American citizens in their New York City apartments. It's too graphic to think about, but yet one of my brothers, a Marine, is looking at spending over 20 years in jail for stopping a man attacking people on a subway. Right. This is the problem. What happens when the state, this is unique, this is the crisis. This is the crisis in a nutshell. This is the upcoming things to come crisis. What happens when the state becomes the enforcer of illegal activity? That we've never seen before. That's our 21st century crisis. Not that there's crime, we know what to do with crime. Not that there's injustice, we know what to do with injustice. What happens when the coercive power of the state is enforcing criminality instead of preventing criminality? So what can we do so our men and women and children do not have a chance of becoming the next Lake and Riley? I think Texas is going to say to hell with it and order its men to protect their state. I think so too. This is going to cause a very bad sweep across the nation. I anticipate a similar situation where there were 5 separate factions fighting in the Russian overthrow of the czars. Yes. I'll stay away from boats to prevent an unfortunate situation where I'm unable to protect my family. Either way, I will remain a happy warrior. All the best, Joe. Yes. So what's going to happen is this. This enforced lawlessness in places like New York is going to continue. They're going to try and do it with Texas. Texas has already shown with that border standoff, which I don't know how was resolved, honestly, because it was looking like it was about to be civil war 3 weeks ago or whatever it was. I don't know how that was resolved, but the federal government will try to enforce Texas, will essentially try to tell places like Texas and Florida, but Texas as an example, you must allow criminals to go out free, and Texas will say no. And then there will come the standoff. And it will not be a shooting standoff. It's going to be a question of who's going to stick to their guns. And I believe that the states will stick to their guns. So what will happen is the federal government, if things don't change on the federal level, will start mandating that the place you live becomes a lawless society. You try to defend your house against a home invader, you go to jail. Okay. Then people will move to Texas. And the people that will move to Texas, at least at first, will be the people who are prepared to defend themselves, because they will move to Texas because Texas will allow them to have their own weapons to defend themselves. Over time, Texas will become the only livable state in the union, and then everybody will want to move to Texas, and that's when Texas has to get serious about who they decide to let into the borders, which is why you're left with no choice but secession. You can't, as a state, Texas as a state cannot legally prevent people from moving to Texas. But Texas as a republic can, and if these progressives continue to get their way, then that's what's going to happen. States are going to secede from the union because they will refuse to go along with this, and then Texas will have the ability to say, you can't come live in Texas because, well, I'm not a criminal. No, you're not a criminal, but you're one of the people that voted for criminals being set free, and you just simply go back and live with the consequences of your own decision. Go start your own Texas if you don't like it. So, look, half the country, and probably more than half the country, gets it. And the other half of the country, the progressive half of the country, is all in favor of letting criminals loose until they get mugged or murdered, at which point they become rock-ribbed conservatives. And that's what's going to happen. They're going to have their noses rubbed in their own choices. It's happened in San Francisco already. It's happening in New York right now. You're going to have your noses rubbed in it. You like living in San Francisco? Well, your voting has made San Francisco unlivable. So now you get to go live in Nevada if you want to. Okay? Oh, you don't like Nevada? You think it's dry and dusty and there's no beautiful scenery like there was back in San Francisco? Well, you ruined San Francisco. So here's your choice. You want to save San Francisco? You want to go back and live in San Francisco? Move back in San Francisco and vote differently. These people can't win because in the end, they create campsites that are so foul that people will leave them. They don't care. They don't care about ruining the state. It's not what they want. They want power and money now for them, period. Number one for them, period. So, so that's it, kids. Let them have their way. This is not my first choice. I've been fighting them having their own way since I've been doing this. But they're determined to have their own way, so if you want to turn your city into a cesspool, do it. If you want to turn your city into a cesspool and then leave your city and go someplace else and then turn that city into a cesspool, that's when it's time for the people in second city, in city B, to say, no, we're not going to have any more people coming into our city. Well, you can't legally stop them. Well, then we're going to have to find a way to change the rules. And if that means leaving the union, that's it. Texas wouldn't have to leave the union if Texas had the ability to set up a Texas border, not with Mexico, but with California via, New Mexico and Arizona and all the rest of it. If Texas could protect its borders as a state, then Texas wouldn't have to leave the union. If Texas could say, we're going to examine every single person that wants to come and live in Texas. We're going to take a look at their backgrounds. We're going to check their Facebook feeds. We're going to see how they voted. We're going to ask them some questions. If Texas had the ability to say, no, you're too liberal to live here in Texas, we don't want you, then Texas would stay Texas. But that's not legal and is not feasible under the federal system we live in. So Texas is going to, if this continues, Texas is going to have to face the choice of, do we want to be told that we have to lie down and be murdered at the hands of criminals by Washington, or are we done with this corruption of what was a beautiful system, and we're just going to have to become independent and sit it out until that thing catches fire and collapses, and then we'll talk about setting it up again. But they can't win. If these people had a different philosophy than we did, and their philosophy created a better world or a better place to live, then I'd change my mind and I'd live there. But that's not how it works. That benefit is on our side. People want to come to our places. I mean, let me just say this to get it out of my system, because I know it's going to sound insulting, but honestly, if you've ever been to California or Texas, and all other things being equal, you'd be insane to live in Texas. Texas is hot, dry, and flat. California is wet, gorgeous, beautiful. It's air-conditioned outdoors. If you stumbled upon these two territories without any political history or background or any emotional attachment, you take California every time, which is why it's what I think we ought to do, is we ought to just take every single conservative in the country and move them all into California, and then just take California out of the union and have California be the conservative capital of the universe. That's the ideal solution, because this place is fantastic. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's absolutely wonderful. It's just absolutely spectacular. That's what we should do. Just everybody move, instead of moving from California, everybody move to California. Move all the conservatives. This is a great idea, actually. I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. Have all of the conservatives in the country, except for those who live in Texas, because Texas is special, and I understand Texas is special. I understand the Republic of Texas. I get the idea that the two flags fly at the same height. I'm not bashing Texas. I'm an honorary citizen of Texas. It's one of the things I'm proudest of in the world. But instead of having all the conservatives leave California and go to someplace that sucks, then why don't we have all the conservatives come to California and just take over California? But you don't want to live in California. Red Force says you don't want to live in California because of Californians, but if you got a chance to experience California, I don't know how anybody could not want to live in California. And besides, California has so many different zones. I mean, Northern California is nothing like any. If you like the desert, we got desert. Boom. And I'm not asking anybody to move. I'm just saying your spare conservatives, the ones who are like, yeah, I don't know where I'm going to go. Just should have moved all of Tennessee to California instead of all of California to Tennessee. That's an interesting point. Selena Girl 69 says California weather is great, and it was red hot conservative. It was. Ronald Reagan was the governor of California. Texas once was Democrat. That's right. Ronald Reagan and Lyndon Johnson coexisted. Their Venn diagrams overlapped to some small degree. Maybe not even officially, come to think of it, but they were certainly knew each other. Texas was blue and California was red. And when California was red, that's when California became California. When California was red is when California became leader in agriculture, leader in aerospace, leader in entertainment, leader in industry. It was where all the good ideas were. And we created such an incredible, conservatives created such an incredible paradise that we just sat there, let these liberal leeches move in, take over everything, suck all the wealth out of it, and do what they always do: suck the life out of their host organisms, let the thing crawl into the bushes and die, and then go find some other host organism. Gipper for president. I love the Gipper. I love him. We should repave California. Just restart the whole thing. Find a new state capital, call the new capital of California Reagan, or Reagan City, or Reaganville, or Reaganopolis, and just clean house. Clean house. First thing we do is we build a wall on the southern border, and I think we practice that for the wall by building a space elevator. I don't think we can build the wall that I would envision for California, for a conservative Republic of California. I don't think we could build that wall until we had the ability, the technological skill to build a space elevator. Because I'm thinking like a big wall, like a wall that creates its own weather, that kind of wall. I've said this before too, I'll say it again. I would rather have a border than a wall, but they won't let us have a border, so now we have to have a wall. I would much rather have a border than a wall. I don't like having a wall on the southern border. We don't have a wall on the northern border. On the northern border, we have a border. We have two people, two civilizations that are more or less equivalent. There's no great enormous rush from one to the other. They're not one is not a failed state. And so our border with Canada is the most remarkable border in the world, in the history of the world. I love it. It'd be nice if that were the way with Mexico, but it's not, because of American politicians. Not because of Mexican politicians, because of American politicians. We should have invested in Mexico. I still think that's an awesome, serious solution to our long-term problems for the rest of the 21st century and into the 22nd century. If it were me as the president and I was just the cheerleader, I don't want magical powers, I don't want dictatorial powers, I would basically say to the world, here's the deal. We're going to use American capital to turn Mexico into China. And that's what we're going to do. We're not going to turn Mexico into China politically. Mexico has lower labor costs than the United States does. They're right on the border. We don't have to ship stuff overseas. They're not our ideological enemies. Instead of moving all of our manufacturing to California, we're going to move our manufacturing to Mexico. The manufacturing that we can bring back to America, we will. But if we want low cost manufacturing, we're going to move it to Mexico. And if Mexico finds that their southern border is being flooded by people wanting work, that's Mexico's problem, it's not our problem. And I would think that would be a fantastic solution, because I've lived in Los Angeles for quite a long time, and I find the Mexicans here to be lovely people. I've always just enjoyed them enormously. I'm not talking about gangs, and I'm not talking about La Raza. I'm talking about just the average American encountering Mexicans or Mexican Americans in California. I find them to be kind, friendly, hardworking, decent, good people. I've loved them, and my brother Steve, who opened a restaurant in San Diego just before the Gulf War, quite a while ago now. He said he's never seen people work so hard in his life. He was not hiring illegals, but he was hiring Mexicans working in his restaurant, and he said these people, meaning the Mexicans in a good way. He said, I'll hire 4 people to shuck shells or whatever the hell he was doing in his restaurant. He says they're all related. They've rented a 1-bedroom apartment. They're hot bunking the place. There's three people working 3 shifts. There's always somebody sleeping. He says they take all of their money and they send all of their money home to their families. He said they're just remarkable people, hardworking family people, kind, polite, and we're dealing with China. We're sending all this money to China to build our stuff. Why? China built a wall. You can see it from your space elevator. Thank you, John, and thank you again for this super chat. That it means so much to me. Thank you. $99 super chat. But seriously, I would. just with the authority as president, without any extra additional authorities, I would reconfigure our alignment. I would make Mexico into our China, and I would make India into our strongest ally, because India has the largest population in the world, and India is much closer to China than we are, and I would have India be the people that dealt with China. That's what I would do. India is not ideologically opposed to us. India, as a country, has a great deal of commonality with America because of the British. And I think they're hardworking people, and I think they're good people, and I would just simply say, no, if I was playing Risk right now, and I had to pick, the first ally I would pick is Australia, just for old time's sake, because because they're Aussies. I just would pick them just to get them off the board. I would pick India second. And if it weren't for the Himalayas, then the history of the world would have been a footnote to the billions of people slaughtered in those two countries perpetually at war with each other, India and China. If the Himalayas weren't there, that's where every single battle of any significance would have been fought over the history of the world. You got a billion people on one side, billion people on the other side hate each other. The battles would have made the Eastern Front in World War II look like a softball game. And it just seems so clear to me. Why would you send your manufacturing across the ocean to people who hate you and are trying to overthrow you? Why not just move it across the border? Because the richer you make Mexico, the lower the temperature gradient between Mexico and the United States is. The United States is very, very cool. America is very, very hot, right? So all the hot things want to go to the cold places, and that's how things work. And the greater that temperature differential is, the more force there is pushing people across the border from Mexico to America. The richer you make Mexico, the less pressure there is on Mexicans to come to America illegally. So let's make Mexico rich. Why don't we make Mexico so rich that we're buying from Mexico? Why don't we make Mexico so rich that we got Americans that are going across the border to Mexico to get some work in industry or whatever? Why not? Why not? Because the people in charge are stupid. And they're not our friends. And all of this establishment sclerosis, and I put the Republican National Committee in here the same as everybody else. Well, that's not how things are done. Well, why not? Why not? Yeah, I can't imagine an America. I can't imagine an America in the 21st any century in an alliance that doesn't include Australia. I mean, it just. It's not a question of how powerful Australia is. It's a question of, well, I hope the Australians watching this take this in the complimentary fashion in which it's intended. But Australians are damn near as good as Americans. I mean, they're just the second best thing you could be. And we have a lot in common. We both haven't had the pleasure of shooting at the British. That's something to be said. Oh my goodness gracious, it's getting out of hand now. Tuesday Scavenger with a $100 super chat. My goodness gracious. Been watching you since my college days in the mid-2000s. Thanks for all the videos, Bill, and thanks for keeping the steely-eyed space age alive for me and others. Cheers. Thank you so much, Tuesday's Avenger. And believe me, the thing I'm looking forward to most is getting back on the Major Mace Mattingly thing, because I think that's just a fun thing to have. I spent 3 months in Australia. I just could not have enjoyed myself more. They're just great, cool, laid back, fantastic, neat people. By the way, Australia, I don't know if you noticed this or not. I was thinking about this the other day. Americans used to say, hey, I'm sorry about that. And we used to say things like, well, no, don't worry about it, or no problem. Now we say no worries. I never heard no worries before I got to Australia. No worries has colonized America. Look what the Australian government did to their people during COVID. Yeah, well, look at what the American government did to our people during COVID. Battlesmurf says, our neighbors in Mexico City are complaining there are too many Americans and English signs around. Americans are moving in droves down there. Well, here's what I know. I know there's a new world, and the new world is North America. South America was never the new world. South America was always the new mine. You know, the South America was settled by Spanish conquistadors who had no interest in living in South America. They simply wanted to go down there, take all the gold and resources they can, and take it back to Spain and live like kings in Spain. In North America, and North America starts at the Mexican border, English settlers came here to stay. They didn't come here to suck the land dry and take the money back to England. They came here to stay. And that's a fundamental difference between, that's why North and South America are so different, and why, generally speaking, North America works and South America doesn't. That border is an important border. The border between Mexico and America is the border between Spanish conquest and English conquest. It's a border between Catholic and Protestant. It's a border between English and Spanish. It's a huge cultural line. And I'd like to move that line from Mexico's northern border to Mexico's southern border. That's what I'd like to do. Eventually, if you did this and this prosperity continued to spread, you could push the line all the way down to the Straits of Magellan. When I was doing a morale event at Guantanamo Bay, I was introducing a band there, and I was just doing a couple little things in between and trying to cheer these guys up, because this is just when Obama took office, and when everybody was saying that, oh, you know, Guantanamo Bay is just a torture chamber and it's a stain on America's honor and we got to close it right away. That was, remember, Barack Obama's first day in office was to sign an executive order closing Guantanamo Bay. I noticed that it's still open. So I went down there when they were feeling low, and I was standing on a stage in front of the bay. Guantanamo Bay is American territory. There's a natural bay. It's a really very beautiful place. It's $1 trillion piece of property if you're interested in developing property and your communism goes away. But the bay itself is $1 trillion real estate, because it's just warm, beautiful water, shallow, nice, gorgeous, fantastic. But I went down there, and I'm standing on a stage, and behind me is the actual bay of Guantanamo Bay. It's all American territory. And I said, you know, people are talking back home, these progressives are talking about closing Guantanamo Bay. And I'm saying, we shouldn't be closing Guantanamo Bay. That border behind me, you see those lights back there, the border line between U.S. territory and Cuban territory? We ought to be pushing those lights back to the far end of the island. We should push those lights way past Havana. Those people just want to have Kentucky Fried Chicken and Krispy Kreme donuts, and they're entitled to them. And this idea that we should be closing this down instead of expanding it, Guantanamo Bay should take over all of Cuba. Then Cuba would be happy. Then the Cubans would be happy, because we'd let them alone. You know, congratulations. Here you go. You got your freedom. Do what you want. You know. The fence around Guantanamo Bay is not there to keep the Americans in. The fence around Guantanamo Bay is there to keep the Cubans out of Guantanamo Bay, not to invade it, but because if you're willing to put together a couple of inner tubes and strap them onto a Chase Lounge and float through 90 miles of shark-infested waters to get to Homestead, Florida, and all you had to do would be climb a fence to get into Guantanamo Bay and you could get to America, of course there's a fence there and a wall there at Guantanamo Bay. Guantanamo Bay is the free world. I've been there twice. And that barbed wire no man's land is there so that all of Cuba doesn't jump the fence to get into this little piece of America called Guantanamo Bay. And I loved Gitmo. I loved it. I thought Gitmo was awesome. I thought it was just a really, really great place, and some of the best people ever. I thought the morale there was just fantastic, and I'm going to wrap it up with this, I think, because I do want to keep it short tonight. But there's a tradition at Gitmo. I mentioned this once, but it's years ago, and it was one of the most moving things I've ever seen. It really was. It made me cry a little bit, not in a girly way, in a manly way. It made me, like watching a flag go by or something. So if you're stationed at Guantanamo Bay, and you have to be stationed there because it's American military base, when you get rotated out of Guantanamo Bay, if you've been there for a while, the locals have a tradition, the Americans living on the base. In order to, so there's the mouth of the bay. Let me see how I can do this on for you watching. So here's south, there's north, here's the mouth of the bay. This side is the windward side, and that's where all the cities are. This side is the leeward side, buildings, not cities. This is where the airstrip is. And there's a ferry that goes from one side to another. So the people live over here, the airport's over here. When it's time to leave, you have to get on a ferry over here and take the ferry and just over to where the airport is. So when you leave and when you arrive in Guantanamo Bay, you arrive and leave on a ferry. After you get off the airplane, you get on a ferry, cross the mouth of the bay, get to where the housing is. And when somebody leaves Guantanamo Bay, all of their friends come down to say goodbye. And the person who's leaving gets on the ferry, and the ferry pulls away. And then all of the friends who are left on the pier go running after the ferry and jump into the water and start swimming after the ferry. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I've never seen anything that impressed me that much. That kind of sense of community. You would have your friends come down to the bay. You'd get on the boat. The ferry would pull away from the pier, and then all your friends would come running after you, trying to bring you back and jump in the water. It was the coolest thing I ever saw, ever. And that's what America is, man. You know, I love showing. I love showing Natasha things like, U.S. military doing the marshalling, or one of my favorite videos of all time. You can find it on YouTube. I've played it many times. It's called Gangnam Shooter. It's guys that are launching jets, I think off the Eisenhower, and they're doing it to Gangnam style. It's just U.S. morale. That's what U.S. morale is all about. That's why when you see our guys having fun, you've got an army that's ready to fight, and the relationship between the, talked about this before too, but it's amazing to me. The best part of a Thunderbird show is prior to takeoff, where the enlisted crew, I think it's like 4 to an airplane, go out there. They do all of these things. It's all like robots, it's all mechanically done. It's military kind of a precision show. And then they line up, and then the pilot, who's an officer, obviously gets on board the jet, and the canopies go down. He's ready to go. And I think it's 3 to a plane. There's 3 ground crew to the plane, and the pilot throws them a salute. They throw a salute back, and then they start doing these hand gesture things where these enlisted people are basically saying, go out there and get them, and the pilots go, they're giving all the squadron symbols, and just this affection, that's the only word for it really, is this affection between the enlisted personnel and the officers, and this mutual sense of respect, like we are equal members of this team. Yeah, there's 3 of you guys, and you're pulling the remove before flight tags off, but we're not these officer lordlings, and you're these enlisted rankers who we have nothing but contempt for. You got to get this right, or else I'm going to die. And that, I've never seen that in any other military ever. That degree of mutual respect. It's not equality, because it can't be. It can't be equals. There does have to be a wall between officers and enlisted men, but it's most permeable in the U.S. military. And when you watch these guys doing this kind of thing, you realize we're all on the same team here. This isn't about officers and enlisted men against each other. This is this team against that team. And this is why I don't ever worry about China. That's why I don't ever worry about Russia. They can't do this. Their societies are not structured this way. The idea that a Chinese ground crewman, a guy fueling a jet on one of their aircraft carriers, could have that kind of personal rapport, kind of that kind of thing with a pilot, and have the pilot return, it's inconceivable. which is why we'll kick their asses. I just say if it's going to happen, I just want to be able to watch it. And I want to watch it close enough so I can hear it. All right, I got some more work to do, so pushing 2 hours, an hour and a half, a little over, something like that. So you get the idea. Anyway, better than no show at all, eh? Would you say? Well, probably not. This show's made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com who keep the lights going and all the rest of the electronics and electricals and things of that nature. I have some more script writing to do. But I am very, 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 very anxious to get on with all the other rest of the things, and I'm not going to go down that road again because I've been saying this for 4 months now, and it's over when it's over. Hello from around the world. Good friend of mine from Wales always talks to me about Jerry Anderson. Jerry Anderson was not Gene Roddenberry, but he certainly was Irwin Allen. You can take that one and chew on it until Monday night when we start talking about entertainment shows again. So great to see everybody. We'll say goodnight to our YouTube crowd first. YouTube crowd talking to you. Hey, heidi ho. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next